let's get now to the mass murder that occurred. They keep showing this guy on TV. I suppose they're justifying showing him because he's on the loose, but boy, oh boy, you realize how many guys look like that guy? I mean, every 46-year-old guy there is looks like that guy. The little scruffy beard that everybody seems to have right now. I don't like doing those. Do you like doing those? Paul said he's lazy and he doesn't. I don't like how it feels. Plus, it never looks right on me. I mean, some people it looks right. Me, it just grows more in some places than others. But anyway, he's got that look. He just looks like, no, it's Lewiston, Maine. And apparently quite a few people know him, but thank God it's not like New York or Chicago. I mean, any number of people, you know how many people look like that? You're looking at it, I bet you could think of 2 people that you know that he looks like, right? Paul said he looks like a friend. I know there's just a million guys that look like him. So anyway, the story is, we've gotten some comments from a couple of relatives and now some neighbors and people who knew him spoke, and nothing surprising. There's a story on Fox this afternoon in which a guy who knew him said everybody knew to stay away from this guy. This guy wasn't right and everybody avoided him. Again, that's not surprising. Now, he doesn't get specific other than another, we could all think of 1 or 2 people that we know that are sort of like that, where there's something not right. They either seem dangerous or seem weird or seem something, and you just don't deal with them. That's what the neighbor said. The neighbor also said everybody knew not to deal with their family. The family just wasn't right. There was just something that wasn't right there. Family members, a sister-in-law, it's a perfect person to talk to, the sister-in-law. The guy's actual brother might be protective. The sister-in-law is not going to be protective of this guy at all. He just killed a bunch of people in her own hometown. She's not holding back. She said she's known him his entire life. And over the last several months, he started getting really weird. Another guy, he's a military reservist. It's unclear. There have been conflicting reports about his overseas tours of duty, but might have played something into it. And the woman said that he had suffered significant hearing loss. And over the last several months, he went out and he bought 2 really high-powered hearing aids. And since he bought those hearing aids, he claims that he's hearing voices. And the places that he said he was hearing the voices are the 2 places that he shot up. This is a common mental illness. And I don't have any doubt that he probably was hearing voices. Some people are schizophrenic, hear voices. Other people who have other mental disorders are hearing voices. It happens to a lot of people. One of the key points, however, is hardly anybody who hears voices or is delusional commits mass murder. I think one of the myths, and it's been created by this whole notion of having an insanity defense, is that people presume that because someone is mentally ill, that they're dangerous. Some mentally ill people are dangerous. But I don't think the number of people that are mentally ill are any more dangerous than the entire universe of our society. We've got zillions of dangerous people running around in our society who are not mentally ill. Mental illness may be on the way up, and I think it is increasing. I think it's dramatically increasing. I think it's a national crisis. But it would be wrong to stigmatize anyone who is mentally ill and thinking that therefore that they are dangerous. So I've told the story all the time. I knew a woman, sister of a woman I was dating. She was significantly mentally ill, but her mental illness was very narrow. She heard voices and she thought that TV shows communicated to her. That's a common one. A lot of people think they're sending me a message. They think that there's, it's a common mental illness. She was diagnosed, I think, as paranoid schizophrenic, whatever she was. But other than those couple of things, she was normal. She was never going to murder anybody. This guy started hearing these voices. And according to the relative, people kept telling him over and over and over again, you're not hearing anything. There's just something wrong with you. He even got mental health treatment and apparently inpatient treatment, but it didn't do any good, or he checked himself out and here he went. So one of the takeaway, and by the way, the guy is on the loose and the authorities are all freaked out that people are locking their doors and so on, that, that somebody's going to go out and try to find him. And I suspect nobody's going to go out and try to find him, that everybody in Lewiston, Maine is on high guard right now until they find him. And how far could he get? I mean, maybe he ran off into the woods. Maybe he's still in town. I don't know. But it is remarkable that you can shoot a place up and then go to another place, shoot the place up and get away before the cops got there. But apparently they were close together. Wouldn't you just think if somebody shot a place up that even in a city like Milwaukee where the cops are overwhelmed that you'd be there pretty quick, and then he went and shot up another place and just. So anyway, he's out there. And they're looking for him. And everybody in the world has now seen his face. And if he's spotted, there's going to be 9 million calls to 911 wherever he is. And the authorities are likely to find him. Plus, they got the dogs out. There's helicopters. They say there are hundreds of law enforcement. There's federal. There's National Guard in addition to. Paul said people think he got away on the jet ski. So he might have gone, what, down the coast? Yeah. So, I mean, he'll be found. This guy's obviously a few bricks short of a full load to begin with. If he's hearing voices and shooting this way, but the fear, of course, is that he's going to be found when he tries to do something like this again. Now, did he tap out all his ammo? Does he still have his weapons? I don't know the answer to any of that. But he's going to be found. And we hope that when he's found, that he doesn't kill any more people, that he's either taken out himself or just surrenders. Paul said he'll kill himself. How do you know that? Paul says they don't always do that. Dahmer didn't kill himself. He was killed in prison by Christopher Scarver. They don't see you in there. They always kill themselves. I don't think that they're that overwhelmingly mass murder. Charlie Manson never killed himself. The guy with the, well, but you're claiming now Dahmer wasn't a gunman. Well, you're right. I mean, what Dahmer probably wasn't going to slice himself up like the way he, maybe you're right about that. I think you're not right about that, but no, I can't think of enough exceptions to the rule. Anyway, he's out there. The part that I want to focus on is what's going on in our society that this keeps happening. We still don't know, in part because the State Division of Criminal Investigation has apparently decided that investigations of homicides are none of the public's business. We still don't know what was going on in Germantown. We know enough about the guy based on what his family has said about him. They have some sense that he's a guy who flipped out and freaked out. We don't know if he went to that school and was going to kill a bunch of people, or if he simply went to that school because it was across the street from the auto repair shop that he flipped out in the first place. We don't know. We know that he, however, had the gun out and was waving the gun around and carrying on about it, which should certainly mean the potential was there for him to do something crazy, just as the guy in Lewiston, Maine did something crazy. But this stuff's happening all the time. And as I said, you just have to deal with stupidity every time it happens. Biden has already popped off, we need more gun laws. Guy's a military reservist. He's trained in weapons. What law are you going to pass that he's not going to have a weapon? It's ridiculous to start talking about that. Now, on a practical matter, I have said again and again and again and again and again, and it's one of those things where people are either going to agree with me or disagree with me. The biggest part of the problem is we don't have enough people in our society with guns. I've been making this point for 25 years, and I may as well make it again. It's stunning to me that you just think of Maine as being a place where there's a lot of people that are carrying guns. I don't know why I think that, but doesn't Maine seem like that? Maine is like the eastern version of Montana. It's amazing that you can go into two crowded places like this and start shooting people, and there wasn't somebody there with a gun to kill them. Now, I understand everybody's diving for cover and freaking out and so on, but I didn't, based on the news reports that I saw, get any indication that there was any gunfire returned at either of the two places that he was, of people there that were carrying a gun and tried to kill him in an attempt to stop the carnage. There are a lot of reasons that this stuff happens, some of which I haven't figured out, but one of them that I have is we simply don't have enough law-abiding people trained in the use of guns walking around in society, that when somebody goes into a school or somebody goes into a bowling alley like in Lewiston, or somebody goes wherever it is and decides to shoot something up, that there isn't somebody there competent in the handling of guns who can pull out his gun and kill that person. It does happen. And it never gets enough publicity when it does happen, where somebody, sometimes it's a police officer, but sometimes it's a civilian, they'll see this happening and they'll pull out a gun and they'll shoot the bastard. Sometimes it does happen, but it doesn't happen enough. So rather than take away more guns from law-abiding citizens, I think we need to encourage more law-abiding citizens to have guns out there, because you can't have a cop on every block. And in this instance, the guy went from one place to another, and the police were unable to get to the second place, that, to prevent the second mass killing from occurring. There isn't a single gun law that you could pass, though, that I think would stop this guy from having had a gun, given what his background was. He didn't have a felony record. He was a military reservist, and he had weapons training. So tell me what law you're supposed to pass. The lefties never believe in institutionalizing people against their will. We've got all these crazies out there because we're not able to hold people by claiming that they're a danger. You have to have overwhelming evidence of it. He was in inpatient mental health treatment earlier this year and left it. So what's causing this increase in people that are doing it? Well, every case is different. But I think that there are some common denominators here, some parallel things that we can learn from. Unfortunately, nobody wants to learn from them because everybody has their agenda that they want to push. I'm more interested in figuring it out. I just think it's no longer arguable that we have a mental health crisis in the United States. We've always had people mentally ill. It just seems to me, and it's anecdotal, because probably a lot of people were mentally ill 50 years ago and never went to a doctor. They were just miserable and they never reported themselves to anybody. But you can't function in our society without going through life and constantly seeing people who appear to be out of their minds. They're everywhere. Why? Well, the only way to find out is to seek the answers. And sometimes we don't look for answers because we're afraid of finding out what they are.
I'm not having a meeting.
There have been studies, they don't get well publicized, but there have been studies that indicate that just about every mass murderer in the United States over the last 40 years was a marijuana user. Those studies are out there. They're real. I didn't say everyone, but almost all of them were marijuana users. There has been a link between marijuana use and schizophrenia. It doesn't mean that everybody who uses pot is schizophrenic, just as not everybody who smokes cigarettes gets heart disease, and not everybody who drinks alcohol screws up their liver. But it is something that can happen, and there has been a linkage. We have set out the toxic message that pot is harmless. You have all sorts of people running around using it. You have the bizarre situation of the people who desperately want to ban cigarettes seem to be the same ones that want to legalize pot, which just strikes me as insane. And I have to think that the increase in pot use and the incredible potency of the pot, this is decades of refining the growing of the marijuana to make it much stronger than it used to be, is a portion of this. So I hope there will be an attempt to find out whether or not this guy Card from Maine was a pot user. The least surprised person on the planet will be me if it turns out that he is. I'm just going to have expected it because it happens so many times. This goof from Germantown who was killed. If I had to wager right now, if Paul wanted to bet me $5, I would, what side are you going to take? I'm going to bet that the guy is a pot user, the guy from Germantown. Paul's agreeing with me on this. Now let's add to the fact that we have way more drugs than we've ever had. I think back when I was younger, there were hardly any drugs to abuse. There were the ones that were there, but it wasn't like there were 18,000 of them. I never even heard of anybody abusing prescription pills because nobody knew what they did. There was pot, there was LSD, there was cocaine, and there was heroin. And then a couple of other things, but that was it. Look where there is now. You have people who figured out things with mushrooms. You've got companies that are selling synthetic pot, something that's chemically identical to marijuana, selling it legally in these head shops. You have states across the United States where you can legally go in and buy pot. You have people that are wolfing it down as if they're eating candy bars. And it's not like they're doing this and doing nothing else. 15, 20 years ago, we had a problem with prescription narcotics being abused. Seemed like the good old days. People got addicted to them, which created an opportunity for drug dealers to sell more toxic stuff. And it was after the prescription pills became an addiction problem that heroin, which is another opioid, much stronger than what's in the prescription pills, came in vogue, and that heroin wasn't strong enough, and here comes fentanyl. In the meantime, there's more meth use than ever. And then in the goofed up world that we're in, where people are trying to do all of their escapism, you got these people running around doing things like mushrooms. The latest explanation for the guy who tried to crash the Alaska Airlines plane is that he did mushrooms before he went and sat in the cockpit. I don't think everybody who uses these things fries their brain. But I think a lot of people who are using these narcotics and mixing them together are frying their brains, and I think that's what's driving this. That's my opinion. And the only way you're going to prove it is if we're willing to never stop this carrying on about gun laws, which aren't going to do any good, and start diving into these people and getting to the bottom of what the things are in each of them that seem to be in common. Now, the reason we don't want to do this is, from the perspective of the lefties and the media, they don't want the conclusion here to be that too many people are using pot. They want to just keep carrying on about gun laws. The next component of this. Now, we're in a bad 1.5-year period here. But other than that, you go back to, say, before COVID. I don't know that this country ever had fewer problems. We had full employment. We weren't at war. The stock market was soaring. Yet we had more people miserable and unhappy than ever before. And that's just continued. You look around the planet, 7, 8 billion people living on the planet. You'd be hard pressed to find a country in which people had fewer problems than here in the United States. You look at the quality of life in much of the world, people are living in abject poverty, starving to death, terrible conditions, or they're in regimes in which they have no human rights at all. Even somebody who's down on their luck here in the United States probably has it a lot better than, say, a Uyghur Muslim does in China, or somebody who's living on the streets of Calcutta. Yet you have people that are terribly depressed. And you wonder, over what? It's a legitimate question. Over what? If your situation is enough to drive you so deeply in the dumps, how did humanity survive as long as we have? Because a whole lot of people have had it way worse than you. I can't imagine the conditions on planet Earth in 600 BC were all that good. But people kept reproducing, they kept living, life went on, the population expanded. And then you look around the situation now and people are just so deeply miserable and depressed. Which then leads them to go and pursue some of the drugs that I think fry their brains, and then they get on the drug and then they're even more depressed, so they take a different drug to counter that. And the next thing you got 37 of these things going on. Again, this is my theory as to what's going on. One of the reasons why people are using all of this stuff is because they're miserably unhappy. And then the miserable unhappiness can get to the point of being actually clinically depressed. It's all over the place. Thank God this generation wasn't around during the Depression. Why are so many people so depressed? No, again, I wouldn't be bringing these things up if I didn't have theories. My own belief is that anybody who sits down and thinks about the world that we live in realizes there's a beginning and an end. And that can be depressing, right? Well, it's all going to end. In the meantime, I got nothing going on and I'm not happy, and all I have to look forward to is it's going to be over. Well, that is depressing. Throughout much of civilization, no matter what religion you were, religion was there for people to offer them the notion that there's a point to all of this. Now, obviously, I'm a Christian. I not only think there's a point to all of it, but I think I know where it's supposed to go. Other people may be Buddhist or whatever, and they have different viewpoints on that, whatever. But the one thing that religion would give people is a sense of perspective and meaning that, particularly if your religious beliefs included a hereafter, that this isn't the end. I suspect we are at a higher level of atheism, or at least, if not direct atheism, disbelief or lack of faith in any religion or any notion of God at any point in certainly American history. Imagine if you got nothing really going on in your life. Say somebody like, you in there. I mean, most people are way worse off than you. Imagine you got nothing going on in your life and now you don't believe in God or a hereafter. It's what? It's depressing. Well, look at what we've done to our society. We've knocked God out. You can't even say it. You can't even say the word Christmas. You can't even name a holiday named after a religion. Look at the number of parents who raise their children with no notion of religion. And we don't even leave it to, well, it's your right to not have a religion or not. Many of the people who aren't religious are obsessed with convincing people who are believers that they're nuts. Try to find an atheist who'll shut up about their atheism. Look at it in the schools. We've created this notion that science and religion are contradictory forces as opposed to complementary, which they are. So we indoctrinate people into this and they end up being godless people. What a surprise that we've got more godlessness and more depression at the same time. Again, I don't think it's a coincidence. Now, let me imagine, and again, to me, the best way to understand anything is to put yourself in the other guy's shoes. I've said this forever. I don't know how many people do it. You never do it, do you? Yeah, you never do that. Like, put yourself right now in Cher's shoes. You can't do that, can you? You understand what makes Cher tick? I do. Well, yeah, but what makes her tick? Why does she do the things she does? No, I think she's obsessed with remaining a star. She's done all the cosmetic surgery, which has kind of worked. She looks awfully good for an old bag her age. She goes out with the younger guy. She's got a constant need to say things that will get her news media attention, say controversial things because she has to remain a star. She has to remain a star. She's terrified of not being a star. I think makes her tick. I don't think she's an overly complicated person. I can put myself in the other guy's shoes, and anytime Cher does something, I can figure out why she's doing it because I think I understand where she's coming from because I'm putting myself in her shoes. Let's imagine now you're just somebody. It's a regular old schlup. Be any age you want, I'll make you 55. You're underemployed. You're not unemployed, but you're underemployed. You make about the same amount of money that you did 10 years ago. You're not keeping up with inflation. You got divorced 8 years ago. You got 3 kids, and one of them doesn't talk to you. Common story, right? Every year you get a year older, and that means you get a year grayer and a year fatter, and you got nothing to look forward to. What's the optimistic thing in your future? There's nothing. Well, I could look forward to 5 years where I'm going to be even older and fatter than I am now. Here's the thing. What I just described, that person, we've had tens of millions of that people throughout our nation's history. But somehow almost all of them dealt with it. And I think it's because whether they made it up or it's legitimate, they had religious beliefs. I think that's it. That's what they lived for. So you can't tell me that the incredible increase in disbelief doesn't have anything to do with the equal increase in depression, miserableness, hiding out in drugs, or just being terribly unhappy and embittered. One of the points that I make is the dumbest decisions that we make are the ones that are based on emotion. Almost every bad thing a person does is done because they do an emotional thing. They do something that they want to do in the short term. And the more they do it, my experience, they become even more unhappy. Let's make it a celebrity. Celebrity, male. It can be a female, but let's make it a male celebrity. He's had sex with 37 different women this year. There are some of them like that. You think that guy's happy? I bet even though he's a celebrity, and I bet these women, they're hot as can be, I bet he's unhappy. But he's totally unhappy. Yet each time he goes out with a new one of these celebrity women and gets to hop on the stack with them, he wants to do it and he enjoys it while he's doing it. And afterwards, he becomes even more miserable. When you think about almost all of the things that people do to pleasure themselves in the short term, almost all of them make them unhappy in the long term. A little bit of denial actually makes you stronger and happier than constantly caving in and doing what you want to do in the short term. Because as I say, you do these things in the short term, there's almost always a consequence for it, and it's almost never good. Every now and then there are things that occur in the popular culture that make this point. That Meatloaf song, Paradise by the Dashboard Light. I mean, it goes on way too long, but it's a perfect metaphor for life. We brought the song up quite a few times, but do I have to explain it again, or do people understand the song? You say I have to explain the song? I don't have to explain the song. You're telling me that more than half the audience knows the point of the song. He claims that. I think you're crazy. Well, I don't think that's right. Paul says it's the name of the song. It's Paradise by the Dashboard Light. That could mean anything. You think that explains the song? If I hadn't heard the song and I just knew it was that, it could have been about anything. It could be about Monet painting like water lilies in Tahiti or something. Paradise by the Dashboard Light. Well, but I mean, there's a message to the song, and the message to the song is at the end. The guy got everything that he wanted and therefore wanted to die. That's the ending of the song. He wants to die. He literally wants to die. He says that that's the final line of the song. The whole point of the song is they use the metaphor of a guy getting to first base, second base, third base, or hitting a home run scoring, which means sex. And they have a baseball play-by-play announcer when they're doing the description as he's going through all of this. And the back and forth is the woman is demanding that he say, yeah, I'm only going to do this if you're going to be with me forever. I'm only going to do it. And the guy eventually caves because he wants to have sex with her. Says, okay, I'll be with you forever. So they have sex. And he's not with her forever. And as he says at the end of the song, he can't wait for his life to be over because that means he'll finally be done with you. He got everything that he wanted in the short term. It made him so miserable that he wanted to die in the long term. It's almost like that could be a gospel. It's a religious message in it. In the short term, having sex with some woman that you can't stand, but she's hot looking and she turns you on in the short term, clearly it's not going to work out for you long term. However long you have the sex, that's going to be the length of time for the upside, and the downside is going to, and the song doesn't even go, I don't think the song goes in, I don't think she got pregnant in the song. I don't think it covers any of that, does it? He just regrets her. He's just with her for the rest of the life because that was the thing that she was demanding in the song. Almost every bad decision we make, that's the way it works out. And almost, you think of all of you. We've all made bad decisions, me included. Almost every bad decision you make, didn't you make the decision because of something that you wanted to do at the time? Almost never is a bad decision one in which you do something at that moment that you don't want to do. Because hardly any of us do things that we don't want to do. But when we do the things that we don't want to do, those are usually the things that in the long run make our lives better. Two guys, 27 years old. They could be women. I say guys because that's what I am. Should I re-identify? Maybe I should re-identify just to drive the lefties crazy. Just claim I'm a woman and just temptation to do these things. See, if I was less famous, I could do these things and probably get away with them. How would anybody know if I wasn't famous? I could go to Florida and just claim this is what I am and put a wig and a dress on and demand that everybody treat me this way and just make a whole mockery of the whole thing. Not that you need to make a greater mockery of it than it is now. Well, let's take two guys that are 27. One of them every month takes $200 out of his paycheck and puts it in an IRA or a 401k. They have same jobs and same money. And the other guy spends all of his money and does all these things that the other guy has put the $200 away can't do because he put the $200 in the IRA or the 401k. Never mind 30 years later when they're both 57. Clearly, one guy's going to be happier than the other, the guy that has all that money. I'm telling you, just 10 years in. The guy who at 37 doesn't have any savings, and the guy, compared to the other guy who already has a nest egg that's beginning to grow, which one's happier? Which one's more content? Which one's scared to death about his future? And the one that's scared to death about his future because they haven't have any money is likely to just keep doing the same thing because now he's unhappy and he has to feed his short-term unhappiness. Well, one of the things that religion gives you is it tells you all these things that you're not supposed to do. Isn't that what sin is? Isn't essentially the definition of sin something you're not supposed to do? That's it, right? People, well, I don't want to be told not to do that. Now, the idea of sin is you're not supposed to do this because you go to hell if you do it. But I don't think that's the point. I don't. I think the point is to help you get through life. If you don't do any of the things that they tell you are sins, I claim in the long run, you're going to be way happier than if you do these things that are sins. Take two people again, 27, make them 37. They can be anything you want. Just come up with a list of 25 things that most religions would say are a sin. One guy over here on the left, he commits all the sins and keeps doing them. The other one commits none of the sins. 15 years later, who's happy? Seriously. My guess is that the one over there on the left has gone through 3 marriages, probably addicted to a couple of things. May have been in jail once or twice. Because these things that you kept doing that were sins kept getting you in trouble. You were doing what you wanted to do in the short term, but in the long term, the guy who didn't do any of the sinning is probably way more content with his life. So aside from religion telling you this is what you need to do in order to get to heaven, which some people just want to reject because they want to do the things that they want to do, it seems to me that it's the ultimate self-help manual. You got all these books. I don't think they're big anymore, these self-help books. You never hear about any of them. Remember all those people came out writing them, they all got famous? There's nobody who does those anymore, are there? Also, you're right, they've become podcasters. That's your first good point of the day. They keep showing this. I'm sick of looking at this guy. Paul, if this is a national cable network box, they think that guy's going to walk in here. What good is it for me to see him? He did walk in. It's going to be a guy that looks just like him. It is uncanny how much he looks like people. That's another reason not to have that scruffy beard. You look like everybody else, although it will allow you to blend in. Paul makes a good point. They all do podcasts now. Yes. So you're just podcasts are for people too lazy to read. Is that what we're saying? That might be correct. Yeah, I know. I just think that it was harder to get published in a book. So at least the person writing the book, some publisher thought they were a good enough writer. Any dork can do a podcast. I'm just afraid I'm going to wade into a load of crap. Whereas if it's a book and you see it's a bestseller, that means at least several million other people liked it. I mean, that doesn't mean it won't be terrible, but at least there was some sort of process that it went through, as opposed to anybody can put a podcast out there and drop it, and the next thing you know, it's out there. And they do. That's why I'm saying the books were so. You are okay, but even then, you can't name any of the self-help podcasters. They're not famous like, Dyer and all of those. Like, I mean, Robbins was one of the biggest. The people that Zig Ziglar started a lot of this stuff, and the self-help. It seems to me that the Ten Commandments are a spectacular self-help manual. I'm serious about this. Let's take, again, two people. Who wants to be the slide, me or you? You. Let's take two people, me and you. Over the next year, you break every one of the 10 commandments and I break none. Who in a year is going to have regretted their decision? You. You say, of course. But you see the point that I'm making. The point of telling people not to sin is it's not simply to get them to live moral and decent lives. It's because it's a better way to live. So my argument here, and you might say that this is a long leap from the mass murder in Lewiston, Maine. I'm trying to hit this thing right on the bullseye, and I think I am. I think the reason you got all of this mass murder is that there are more people who are miserably unhappy and become clinically depressed because they're on drugs and everything else. And I think that this all comes from something. And it comes from saying yes to every bad temptation that we have, and saying, and living in a world in which nobody wants to tell you no anymore. Again, I have no way of proving this. Let's get 10,000 atheists in a room and 10,000 devout believers, and they don't have to be Christian, just devout believers, and run mental health exams on them. I think the 10,000 devout believers will have more people that are happy than the 10,000 atheists. And I think of the 10,000 atheists, there will be more people that, and again, I'm not saying they're exclusive. I'm not saying there are no happy atheists and that there are no miserably unhappy, depressed, devout believers. I'm not saying that. Then there's beliefs that can become toxic, like what's happening with radical Islam, where you simply you take your religion into law, and you're not told not to sin. The entire teaching is to slaughter other people. You're the master race, and so on. So again, I'm not even suggesting that all religion is created equal. I'm just saying that if you did break it down, though, people who believe that they're living for something and have proper direction and guidance on how to live their lives are going to turn out happier than people who don't, even though you would think it's counterintuitive. Well, if I do these things that are going to make me happy, it should make me happy. Isn't that fascinating, though? If you do the things that you think are going to make you happy, you'll never be happy. So how do you be happy then? Don't do any of the things that you think will make you happy. I swear it works. And again, nobody is happy as a clam. I mean, you're not, are you? I mean, the people that are completely happy, they're also crazy. And I think my belief is that we're not made to be perfectly happy on Earth. It's kind of the point of Earth. Whenever people say, well, why does God allow these terrible things to happen? Well, if Earth was perfect, what's the point of heaven? I don't know why everybody can't figure that out. That to me is obvious. God lets miserable things happen in this world because this world is a preparation for a world that's either better or worse, depending on which way you go. That's my opinion. Anyway, I don't think you can disconnect the level of mental illness, drug abuse, bizarre behavior. You can't disconnect that from the turning away from religious beliefs that we have seen across our society. Now, let me bring this home. Some people aren't going to like this. Some 9-year-old kid, boy, let's make him a boy, wants to be a girl. So therefore, we facilitate this. By the way, I have some good news. You want to hear the good news? Peggy Troy's retiring her sorry butt. CEO of Children's Hospital of Wisconsin. She's retiring. Bad news is it's not until next year, but she's announcing her retirement. Hopefully you'll get somebody less toxic running that institution in the future. Somebody who doesn't chase government grants to do unthinkably barbaric things to children. Anyway. 9-year-old kid, I'm a boy, I want to be a girl. In the same fashion, the 37-year-old guy, I want to do heroin. Or I want to commit rape. Or I want to cheat on my spouse. Whatever the thing is. We let him do it. And the next thing you know, his you-know-what is clipped off. And they pump him full of hormones. Seriously, what's he going to be like at 29? I mean, we all know they're going to be nuts. They're going to be miserably unhappy because they're not women. But now they're really trapped because everything's been sliced off. Isn't that exactly the same as all the other things that I'm talking about here? Because we don't tell anyone no. We don't tell them you've got to work your way through it. And if you work your way through it long run, you'll be way happier than if you say yes to whatever stupid short-term desire you have. I want to be a girl today. Just as I want my fentanyl, I need the buzz today for the 3 hours that it buzz lasts on you. All this stuff. And I get short-term desires are very, very powerful, and all of us succumb to them. And the people that recover from them, the most of the ones that they don't stray too far afield, that it's relatively minor or it's controllable or you reverse the decision. But for those people who keep going down those paths, tell me that that isn't the reason that we have the crisis in mental illness, that they keep making self-destructive decisions because they keep doing what it is that they want to do. Nobody stops them from doing it. And they keep spiraling and spiraling and spiraling and spiraling and spiraling because there is zero influence in their life telling them not to do it. Let's go back to the lunatic who went up on the casino, from the casino hotel room in Las Vegas and shot it. What was that guy's name? The guy who killed the people at the country music festival. What's his name? Why don't you know his name in there? Well, because I forget these things. You need to remember some of these things from me. I don't think I've ever forgotten something that you remembered. What's his name? Paddock. I was going to say Paddock, Stephen Paddock. Now let's take him. He didn't seem to show any signs of progression toward this. He didn't have a big criminal history. He had a kind of weird dating life, but other than that, he didn't seem to be, my belief, in his case, and he's a little bit different than the others, that he just wanted to do it. That there are some people that was the ultimate vicarious short-term thrill, that he wanted to slaughter people, that he thought that would be the coolest thing to do, so he finally figured, I got nothing else to live for. I'm going to go out and in a blaze of glory, I'm going to kill these people. That's what I want to do. Yeah, he's planning it because he was looking forward to it. This is his ultimate arousal. He was orgasmic when he was doing it. There's no way that guy believed that there's a heaven or a hell. You don't make your last act slaughtering people if you think you're going to go to hell for doing it. You understand, therefore, what we've done to our society. It was, well, you're just saying we should have religion because it makes people less nuts. But what if religion isn't true? Now, I could argue forever what's true and what isn't true. I'm just saying that you see the ramifications here. In a society more affluent than ever, we have more miserableness. You look at World War II. Tens of thousands of young people just going off and getting killed. People sending off their son, their new young husband, knowing there's a very good chance they're going to die, depending on where they were sent or what their job was. The ones that weren't killed, way, way more came back without legs and arms and all of that. I suspect there was less depression in our society then when that was going on than there is now. You see some vacant staring 26-year-old, borderline millennial, borderline Generation Z, completely unhappy, still living at home. Mom still makes his bed. He doesn't have a single problem in the world, but he's miserably unhappy. And he's miserably unhappy because he hasn't made one correct decision in his life. He wants to still live at home and he still wants mom to make his bed. So mom keeps making his bed. They're both doing, and the mom doesn't want to tell him, no, you have to get out of the house. Nobody does the actual right thing. And what's the end result? Is this compassion or is it making the person even more miserable? What's he going to be 4 years from now? Still living in the bedroom, even more miserably unhappy, and probably by then on 15 different drugs to try to do something to lift him out of the depression that he's put himself in. Very few religions tell you to just wallow around in self-pity and be a bum and don't make anything in your life. But we've culturalized people to do this. We're culturalizing girls to lop off their breasts because they happen to be going through a phase that they think that they're a boy. In many states, we've culturalized people to use incredibly potent pot, despite the knowledge that many people who use this pot become addicted and miserable, and some become schizophrenic. We look the other way as people are using heroin that makes the heroin that was around in my day in the 70s look like it was a Tic Tac pill. You got fentanyl running around all over the place. You have people in college embracing utter hatred. How do we produce a generation of young people who have decided that they're going to support the terrorists and not oppressed Jewish people? How did any of this happen? Because nobody ever told you you're not supposed to do this. Nobody ever introduced the notion that religion also is a pretty good way of guiding your life. We keep facilitating people doing self-destructive things all in the name of, well, I want to. And again, whenever somebody says, I want to, it's usually to fill a short-term emotional need, which never works. I'm right about this. Absolutely right about this. I just said that. Paul said, I think the drugs and the lack of religion are big, as if that wasn't my entire point. Are you just saying that you just did my whole 55-minute segment in 2 seconds? Is that what you're saying? Well, yes, I understand that, but I'm a talk show host. I have to lay it out and explain it and pile it on and give you the logical argument for it. And nothing I gave you here was emotional. It was all based on logic. Again, there are exceptions, but look at this goof up there. You think this is a real religious guy? You think he's used drugs? You think he's like facility? You think that every time he's wanted to do something dumb, he's done it? Most can turn out like this. And I get sometimes you just develop a mental illness and you don't, there's nothing that you do that brings it on. Some people are just chemically wired wrong. I understand that. But that isn't an explanation for why it's on such the increase right now. And it's just gotta be. I get some of it is copycatting. When we didn't have many mass shootings, it didn't dawn on anybody to commit a mass shooting. Now there's mass shootings all over the place. It makes it even more likely there's going to be another mass shooting. It certainly makes you aware that when you have something like happened in Germantown, you had police officers who fortunately were there real quickly, unlike Lewiston, Maine. And again, we don't know if this guy was going to kill anybody or not, but based on everything that's happened, there's certainly a chance that he would have. Look around you. Paul said when he was Kent State was the only one growing up. And that was, well, Kent State wasn't, you don't even know what Kent State was, do you? Kent State, no, that wasn't Kent State. Kent State was the National Guard and the protesters. What are you thinking of? There were a couple in the tower, but I mean, Kent State was the National Guard. And that was the incident over which Neil Young wrote the song Ohio. And it was protesters that were killed when the protest got violent. Now, there might have been a tower connected to that, but yeah, it was the National Guard that did it, and they were protesters that had become violent. There was the one in San Diego where the girl got up, what did she hate? She hated Mondays or whatever, and she was in a tower, but they were very, very rare. The mass murders that we had were like Ed Gein stuff, or more contemporarily, Jeffrey Dahmer stuff. But this notion of just going into a public place and shooting things up. Let's go back to the idiot lefties in Wauwatosa. the shooting of the 17-year-old at Mayfair. You understand he had a stolen gun and was heading into a mall with it and shot at the cop to try to stop the cop from stopping him from going into the mall. And the idiots in Wauwatosa were upset that that guy was shot. He might have slaughtered people in Mayfair. Why was he running with a loaded gun into Mayfair? Yet we act upset when the monster with the gun is the one that shot. They tried to fire that officer, protested on the streets because he may have saved a lot of lives by stopping someone with a stolen gun from charging into a crowded shopping mall in rush hour time. It was late afternoon in my recollection. All of these are good points. But Paul says the tower was the University of Texas. Well, how did you turn that into Kent State? You same time period. You merged them. Well, it's a good thing I'm here to correct you. Well, the reason I know that Kent State was that because that's you've heard the song Ohio. That was about Kent State. It's Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, but that was when they all went like Neil Young did the song, and it was released, I think, under Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. But it's Neil Young's incredible guitar in there and the singing and the indignation. Kent State actually ended the anti-war movement. There wasn't much after that, and it also, I think, led most Americans to just be fed up with the war. Oh my God, we're tearing our country apart and so on. And Kent State was about 1970, and he got out of Vietnam in early 73, but Nixon was making it pretty clear we were peeling out of it. So I think 1970 was probably Kent State. Look that up. When was Kent State? 1970, right? Whenever he tries to look something up, he puts his nose right up to the screen because he needs glasses. Can't you read things from like where my head is over here? You can't, obviously. You need the cataracts. But spinning, putting your head close to it doesn't speed it up. That spinning thing. Remember when Microsoft and Bill Gates had the hourglass that was on there? They got rid of that a long time ago. Those hourglasses just drove you crazy. All right, I'm going to look it up. When was Kent State? You don't have to say what, just when was Kent State? I got it. 1970, May 4th, 1970. I was right about 1970. Kent State. Now you bring up Columbine. Columbine was probably what started the school shootings in the modern era. There were a couple before that, but Columbine was the one that, if you go back, when did it all pick up in pace? Columbine. And you saw the reaction. Everybody wanted to feel sorry for the shooters and all of that stuff. And every possible message that you could learn, well, we need more treatment, we need more this, we need more that, as opposed to be more demanding that people stop embracing this kind of lunacy. When somebody keeps doing terrible things, that isn't an argument for mental health treatment. It's an argument to get them to stop doing terrible things. We act as though the mental health is the progression rather than the place that they are when they're doing the awful things. All right. Why are they all mentally ill? Why do you have, why, and they were among the first of like the alienated kids, the kids that were never told no, the kids who were raised with them. Well, I mean, we had a terrible case in Waukesha County 10 years ago of a little girl almost being murdered by two others who were trying to impress a fictional character. They were like 11 years old when they had these ridiculous beliefs. Well, maybe if they had been taught to believe in something other than Slender Man, they would not have turned out that way. Say what you want about any of these things, but the theories that I have, I hold deeply. I think I'm right about this. Well, you know I'm right about this. I am right.